Hello everybody, I'm Ninjo X the Enlightened Gamer bringing you another enlightened vlog. You know, it's occurred to me, I've talked about a lot of serious issues already. But one thing I haven't really talked about is I haven't had a vlog that's dedicated to just gaming yet. I've talked about my show, I've talked about lots of serious issues involving gaming and related to gaming. But I haven't really talked about the gaming industry as a whole, modern or past. So I thought I would take some time for this vlog to talk about my opinions and discoveries based off of the current console wars and the console wars of old. This episode might get a little bit opinionated, so just warning you guys. Okay, everybody remembers, well, everybody that was there certainly remembers, of the old console wars between Sega and Nintendo, where both companies essentially ran a non-stop smear campaign against the other. And both consoles sold relatively well to different groups. But it was really up to whether or not you preferred Sonic or Mario that determined whether you got a Sega or a Nintendo console. Because those were the two big titles that everybody knew about. And I mean everybody knew about them. It wasn't until the very first Game Boy that Nintendo really started to pull away from Sega. Sega tried the handheld thing, and to be perfectly honest, from a graphical and technical aspect, Sega's handhelds are better. But Nintendo had them beat in two major categories: durability and expense. You could get a Game Boy, or even a Game Boy Color, for next to nothing, and heck, I still have a Game Boy Color. In fact, I'm going to go grab it. See? And it still works too. There's nothing in it right now, but it does. Anyway, that's probably the weirdest thing I've done on a vlog so far. But the current console wars between Sony and Microsoft are so drastically different from the console wars of old. The console wars of old, there really weren't third-party developers. There were plenty of second-party developers like Rareware, Game Freak, and I guess you count PC, Blizzard, and a couple of others, but there really weren't many third-party developers. Interrupting Kitty is very tempted to interrupt. Where now all we seem to have is third-party and first-party developers. Really, the only company that seems to be keeping the second-party developers around is Nintendo. And I know a lot of modern gamers accuse Nintendo of being stuck in the past, rooted in the past. All they do is make nostalgia. All they do, they never break away from their roots. But that's the best thing about them. Is that even whenever all the other companies are chasing the trends, Nintendo doesn't. They continue making the same great games, but different. And better in their own way. And believe it or not, Sony and even Microsoft used to do this. Microsoft had games like StarCraft and games like Mech Assault, Mech Warrior, and games like the Halo series that really pushed the limits of what the console they were on could do. Now, I know technically StarCraft was made by Blizzard and not by Microsoft, but Microsoft has, I don't think there's honestly ever been a single software game title developed by Microsoft, probably in their history. It's just not the way they function. They supply the hardware, and then other people supply the software. But Sony, back right before Sega finally faded into obscurity as a console developer, Sony did the same thing. They had multiple titles that were competing for the hammer of gamers everywhere. They had Spyro and Crash. Later they had Ratchet and Clank. They still have Ratchet and Clank. That's about the only one they have left now, though. They had... Actually, they had too many mascot attempts back in the PlayStation 1 era. Some games like Tiny Tank and Gex and Croc didn't really stick with people. Because they were just a little bit flawed. It doesn't mean they were necessarily bad games. They just didn't really stick with the gaming community. And the companies that made them decided that they weren't going to make any more. It wasn't successful enough of a venture. That almost never happened with Nintendo, however. Mario, Link, Kirby, Donkey Kong, Pikachu, Samus, I'm drawing a blank, and others. Pretty much every iconic character that Nintendo's made has stuck. Well, Nintendo only makes games for kids. First off, no they don't. And second off, so what if they do? They don't make games that are just for kids. They make games that kids can play without being traumatized. That doesn't necessarily make them kids' games. Heck, look at the game I'm Let's Playing right now. Look at Twilight Princess. That is a game that is clearly not meant for kids. But, to get to the root of the issue with Microsoft and Sony, one thing that they've started to do, both of them, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, both of the consoles are pretty much on par with one another. Neither one really tries to do anything amazing and break away. Yes, they definitely push the graphics envelope and the processing envelope, both of them. But did you ever wonder why they're so similar in terms of resolution and in terms of graphics and gameplay? Ports. Third-party porters. Now, I don't mind remakes. In fact, I really like some remakes. But ports bother me. They really, really do. And the reason ports bother me, games that are ported out to every system known to man, and keep in mind, not every game is like this. There are the BioShocks of the world. But a port has to be made so that it can be supported by multiple consoles. When you make Madden NFL 07, or I guess 15 would be the one for this year, then it has to be low enough resolution and be able to be handled by both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Now, that's fine, except that those games don't really push the limits of what the console can do. And that's the one thing that Nintendo has always done. With every single game that they've made, except for the serious flops, Nintendo has always pushed the capacity of their hardware to its limit and sometimes beyond. That's one of the reasons why I still play some of those games to this day. Donkey Kong 64 looks like it could run on the GameCube. Ocarina of Time looks like it could run on PlayStation 2 at the very least. And there's so many other examples. But when you play a lot of these ported games, eschewing graphics, which really graphics are pretty much meaningless to me. Most of these games look like they ought to be running on the console before the console that they're on. These Call of Duty games, other than stuff like the gun physics or the graphics on the guns, if you tone the graphics back, you could easily run those games on Nintendo 64, on PlayStation 2, because there's not really much to them. Now, I know I'm being kind of negative here, and I warned you that this would be an opinionated episode. But, to go on with this, ports are becoming, in my opinion, the root of what is wrong with the current gaming market. Companies trying to get quick cash-ins instead of spending the time to get people's attention. Because gaming is so mainstream now that there isn't anybody that hasn't heard about it. There isn't anybody that hasn't done it, at least not from my generation, at least once, just to say that they had played a game, that is, that companies don't really have to compete for our attention like they used to. Nintendo back in the old days was the best gaming company, at least until Sega came along. They single-handedly prevented the gaming market from crashing with Super Mario Brothers. And how did they do that? They took a market that was being used for boop, 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 and turned it into something people had never seen before. They made a game that felt like an adventure, that got your adrenaline pumping, that you didn't know if you could beat, that actually had a finite beginning and end. Beginning and end. I did that backwards. And it was so fantastic because it had to be. The fact is, video games don't have to be fantastic anymore to get bought. In fact, the fantastic games are usually the ones that don't sell well. The best games are usually the ones that molder on store shelves. The Earthbounds, the Shadows of the Colossuses. And while there are gamers who will look at those games as the artistic high points of the industry, there are others that just want to get their quick fix. And there's no easier way to get a quicker fix than with ports. The Maddens and the Call of Duties and the Grand Theft Autos and all these other games that get pushed out on the market as fast as humanly possible, leaving twin trails of urine behind them because they're moving so fast that they can't hold their bladders. And they're able to do this and continue to make money because people continue to buy them. Because people just want to get their quick fix. They don't want to sit down and play a game where they have to actually think about what they're doing. People don't want to sit down and play a Zelda game anymore. Because if you sit down and play a Zelda game, it means you have to sit there and... Okay. I see what's going on. I get it. Or if you're playing one of the other games that I mentioned, you can just, yay! I'm going to flail my arms around like a person and I'm going to run from point A to point B and get nothing accomplished in my life. there's no achievement, there's no progression. And for me, those are two of the big things that I play for. Two of the biggest things I play for. It's not about story. It's not about the style of game. It's not about what company the game comes from. It's about, did it push the limits of what we thought was possible? Did it push the limits of our imagination? Did it make me grow as a gamer? Or is it holding me in place? And even though there are some ports that are very, very, very well made, that they just toss out graphics to an extent and then they focus all on story and development and gameplay, far and away the majority of ports, especially to the newer consoles, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, are made by what would that even be? A fan? I guess that could be like an indie game. Third-party developers who just want to make money and who don't care if they release crap year after year after year. It's a sad state that the gamer world is in right now. And I'm not speaking to you as a hipster. I'm speaking to you as Ninjo X, the Enlightened Gamer. There are newer games that I want to play. But then there are games that I never want to play. The games that truly, truly are a waste of time. And just saying that, to me, a waste of time is one of the biggest sins. A true waste of time where nothing is gained for the sacrifice of time. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Because time is where we measure everything else. All of our non-material possessions. Time is where we hold our memories. It's where we look to the future. It's where we hold our ambition and our inhibition. It's where we hold the people we love. It's where we hold our souls. So to waste time, there is no greater folly. I warned you all this would be a very opinionated episode. So here comes the opinionated bit. In my opinion, opinion, in my opinion, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are the worst video game consoles of all time. I would much rather purchase a Virtual Boy again than purchase either of these two gaming machines. Because they are a symptom of a disease that is quickly racking the gamer community. Games that prey on the gaming sociopath are becoming not only the norm, but the only thing. And the last bastion of hope for the future of gaming consoles is the arrogant Wii U, who completely refuses to get into any of the trends. I don't like to be negative like this, guys. I really, really don't. I want to be positive. I want to be happy, funny, laughy, jokey Ninjo. In real life, outside of this show, I can be a very fun, very goofy, very blasé kind of person. Very emotional, very silly. Almost Chugga-Conroy-esque at times. Forcing bad puns just for the nature of them being bad puns. But this is nothing to laugh about. I'm not saying that the video games I like to play are the only ones that should be played. Even back in the era of the Super Nintendo, there were games that I look at today as cheap cash-ins that really didn't get much development or thought. Or games that prey on the gaming sociopath. Video games made for a mature mind aren't the ones that you would think. They're certainly not the ones that are rated M for mature almost ever. There are exceptions. There are the Conker's Bad Fur Days of this universe. Games that are both incredibly grotesque and graphic, but that somehow adds to the realism and the feeling of the game world you're in. And television, or even streamed videos and streamed movies and streamed TV shows are in the same exact boat. TV has found a way to get around all of its bans with streaming. There's no real restrictions on it yet. You have to be careful what you pick and choose to put on the televised airways, because you never know who could be watching. Could be an adult, could be a young child. And regardless of what you might think, shows like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones probably aren't the best things to show your 5-year-old child. Probably not the best kind of influence for them to have. But because of streaming and because of Netflix and the like, people can get away with it. And if we don't take a stand as gamers, it's just a matter of time before games start doing that. In fact, it's already started. It's called Steam. Now again, none of this is all bad. Within the bad, there is certainly good. There are Steam games that are very promising, very artistic games. And then there's Goat Simulator. Here's hoping to a better year in gaming than the last. I've been Ninjo X the Enlightened Gamer. Until next time, stay strong and stay enlightened.